What's up again, everybody? With the launch of the new set only 2 days away now, let's jump into another set of cards. So we've already talked about the common Hawkgirl here. Now let's talk about the uncommon Hawkgirl, haunted by history. She is a 2-cost mask character with that Justice League affiliation. Same 022133144 stat line. And she says, whenever a sidekick attacks, spin Hawkgirl up 1 level. So there are some strange wording questions here with this card. Does a Hawkgirl dice spin up when any sidekick attacks, or when all sidekicks attack, or does it spin up for each of the sidekicks that attack, so multiple spin ups? Do all of them spin up at the same time if you have multiple Hawkgirl dice, or do you just spin up one of your Hawkgirl dice? There's a lot of things going on with this card. If my memory serves me correctly, then cards in the past with wordings like this would spin up every die in the field. This does allow you to get a bunch of these dice out, then spin them all up without having to attack with them, versus the common, which you do actually have to attack with the die in order to spin it up. And what that does is it allows you to bide your time and use them as potential blockers until they're all 4/4s, at which point you can just push with them, which I think is a pretty cool mechanic overall. In Constructed, I can kind of see this fitting onto a Mask Ring team or some sort of a flying sidekick team because it incentivizes you attacking with sidekicks. Both the uncommon and common versions of Hawkgirl are about equally good in draft, and the change comes in the way that you need to play them. The common is naturally more aggressive, while the uncommon has more value if you are patient with it. So I'd give this like a 3 in Constructed and a 4 in draft. A 2-cost 4/4 is still really good. Next up, let's take a look at Killer Croc, the uncommon version. This is a 6-cost fist character with that villain affiliation, a 144-255-277 stat line, and his ability says, when fielded, KO all other character dice with an attack of 2 or less. So this ability could conceivably wipe the board of all characters if you can get it early enough, and it definitely takes out all the sidekicks on the field. Unfortunately, this also KOs your own character dice with attack 2 or less, so that's pretty bad. This synergizes well with the high attack sides, as you essentially are keeping your Killer Croc dice from being chump blocked by sidekicks or small characters, forcing your opponent to block with things that they might not normally engage with. But that being said, the fact that it KOs your own low attack characters and that it costs 6 hurts its value in both Constructed and in draft. I don't think you'll see this played in Constructed very much unless flying sidekick teams start performing well. For that reason, I'd give this a 2 in Constructed, but not a 1. I'd give this a 2 in draft only because board clears are really strong, though because it clears you as well and doesn't give you the opportunity to reload blockers, it's pretty bad. So maybe this does deserve a 1 in draft, just because it has too many cons for the pros. Here we also have Jervis Tetch. He is a 2-cost shield character. This is the common version, by the way. He's a villain character affiliated. He's got an 011, 021, and 122 stat line. Really low stat line, but he's a 2-cost, so it kind of makes a little bit of sense. His ability says that when he attacks, gain control of target opposing sidekick. That sidekick must attack this turn if able. This card has some great value if you're up against some sort of a sidekick team, or a team in draft that has some sidekick pieces or allies. And there are some allies within this set, so you could actually see this catch an ally and then push to attack with it. And even if you aren't up against an ally or a sidekick team, the fact that this could just grab an opposing sidekick and smash it into another sidekick is decent. If your opponent then chooses to block with one of their sidekicks, the sidekick that you've stolen and are now attacking with, then that person would, I guess, get 2 dice to roll next turn. So you're kind of giving them ramp. But if they choose to let it through for some reason, then your Jervis is essentially just his ability reads, when he attacks, deal 1 damage to your opponent, and that's pretty good. The benefit of this ability is that multiple of these dice make this ability a lot better, because when attacks abilities always trigger per the attacking die. The ability to steal your opponent's sidekick board could actually be devastating in a format like draft, where emptying your bag of sidekick dice and putting them onto the board is something that you often do. So I'd give this like a 2 in Constructed, unless, again, you're up against some flying sidekick teams a lot within your local meta. I'd give this like a 3 in draft, where low-cost characters that can disrupt the board state are pretty good overall. You would have to have a lot of these for it to get a ton of value, though. Moving on to the uncommon Jervis Tetch. This is a 4-cost shield character. Same stat line as before, same villain affiliation as before. This ability reads, while Jervis Tetch is active, after your opponent declares attackers, gain control of target opposing character die with purchase cost cost 4 or less. This character die and Jervis Tetch must block this turn if able. So I won't spend too much time talking about how the stat line for this card is way low for the 4 cost, but essentially you have to look at this as both its stat line plus the stat line of whatever 4 cost character you steal when it attacks. And what you want to do with this card, it would seem, is take one of the cards that they are attacking with, take a die that they are pushing with, and use that now as a blocker. Or take a look at whatever they are attacking with, compare their stat line to another of their characters' stat lines, and figure out a way to take one of their characters and end up KOing 2 of their characters using the one that you block with. Now, the one piece of text that keeps this card from being absolutely insane as a control piece is the part that says this character die and Jervis must block this turn if able. And so Jervis is always going to get KO'd. I mean, there's probably very, very few instances where your opponent's actually going to let Jervis stay up, because if they do, then you're just getting more free value the next time that they attack. All that being said, do I see this being run on any sort of villain team? No, not really. I think it's still a little bit too expensive for the ability. If Jervis didn't have to block along with this, then I definitely think this earns a place on some sort of team somewhere, but because he does have to go in and get himself KO'd, then this probably just doesn't see play. I'd give this a 2 in constructed. Strong ability, but it's just not sustainable. I'd probably give it a 2 in draft as well because of the same exact reason. Strong ability, but just not sustainable, and probably even more of an energy sink in draft because 4 energy is a lot harder to come by, even though you do it every turn. But you want to spend that a little more wisely in something where it's more scarce, like in draft. Here we also see Huntress. This is the common Huntress, the 3 cost bolt character with that villain affiliation. She's got the 022, 133, 143 stat line that we've seen on her before from the other sets. This ability says when fielded, deal damage equal to the Huntress's attack to target character die. So anytime she slams down on the board, she can ping them for either 2, 3, or 4. And that's any die that you choose, period. Could be your own, could be your opponents. I see this having most utility in draft. I don't really see a place for this in constructed. It's a generally good die, it's a generally good ability, but really this has more utility in draft where you kind of need a 3-drop, you kind of need something that has a decent ability, and this kind of fits that bill pretty much to the T. Pop it out there, KO something with it, something relatively small, and that's kind of what it does. In constructed, I guess you could use it as some sort of KO mechanism to activate some combo, but outside of that, there's probably not a ton of usefulness for this. So I'd give this a 1 in constructed and a 3 in draft because 3 cost characters that do something, anything mediocrely good, are pretty good. Moving on to the uncommon and common versions of Mr. Miracle. Let's look at the uncommon version first. He is a 2 cost masked character. He is one of those new gods. He's got an 011, 022, 132 stat line. For 2 cost, that's not bad. His ability says when Mr. Miracle is KO'd, you may move another character die from your field zone into your prep area. If you do, return Mr. Miracle to the field zone at level 3. So here we have a really cool ability in that you can attack with your 1/1 Mr. Miracle, hope that it gets KO'd, and when it does, or if it does, then you move a sidekick off of your field zone to the prep area, roll it next turn obviously, then put Mr. Miracle back on the field as a 3/2. So you get a little bit of value and you have a nice little cycle mechanic. This is also good for cards that really like coming out of prep and then being refielded. So when fielded effects can activate, you can kind of cycle those with a Mr. Miracle, and he's really cheap too. So this is all in all a really cool ability that does do some cycling for you and just gives you a small amount of value. Where this does do some cool things and where this does have some benefits outside of just what we've talked about is the fact that it has a New Gods affiliation and it is affiliated with that big Barda that gives New Gods characters +2/+2. So its stat line can actually get a little bit of a buff in addition to that nice cycle mechanic. So I think this card is really, really strong in draft. I think that's where it'll shine most. As of right now, as I've said with Big Barda and the other New Gods so far, I don't think there's enough of them to warrant running them in constructed, so I'd give this a 1 in constructed. But in draft, I think this is a 4. The fact that it has a nice little ability by itself and then can get buffed, and it's really cheap for this whole package, is really, really good. If you can get it in draft along with that Big Barda, that does the buffing. Looking at the common Mr. Miracle, the common version is also a 2-cost mask character, same affiliation, same stat line. This one says Mr. Miracle cannot be targeted by opposing action dice or abilities. This ability, unlike the other one we just spoke about, I don't think this has a ton of utility. I don't think this has a ton of places. What I do think this is good for draft, in the idea that you just draft it and get the dice and then run the uncommon version. That's about it. The fact that you can block your 1/1 from being, targeted by some ability really doesn't mean much. The only upside is that affiliation and that cheap cost, but again, you're just getting a 3/2 with this, unless you get that buff with Big Barda, in which case, it buffs a little bit. But you're almost always going to run the uncommon version over the common version here, so I'd give this a 1 in constructed and a 1 in draft. All right, the last card we're going to take a look at in this video is this super rare version of Mr. Miracle. He is a 3-cost mask character, same stat line as before, and it says, while Mr. Miracle is active, your action dice gain Boomerang. And Boomerang, if you remember, is after using this die, roll it. If you roll a burst face on it, then add it to your prep area. So this is the card that you want out and you want to use to create all of those crazy shenanigans where you're using all of these actions and then putting them back into your prep, then using them all again. This could create some really, really cool combos and synergies, and just gives you a lot of value if you run a couple of actions that you want to play multiple times, that do some buffing or that do some over crushing, that sort of thing. Even just using Superhero Registration Act and then rolling it a second time and then landing the burst face and then guaranteeing that you're using it again next turn, or at least rolling it again next turn without doing anything but just buying a 3-cost early in the game. That's pretty cool, and that's going to do a lot for you, for your ramp side of things compared to your opponent. And I think it's mainly for its usefulness with something like Superhero Registration Act in this modern format that I think this would actually see some play. You buy it early and then you use it to keep moving SRA over and over and over again into your prep, essentially for free as long as you can land the roll 50-50, so that's pretty good. Same thing for draft, same usefulness. Obviously you take it, obviously, because it's a super rare as well. And so I think you get some good stuff out of this, and you should be able to pick up the common and uncommon. So you could run multiple of these if you wanted to, multiple dice for the card. Overall, I'd give this a 3 in constructed, as I do think it does have some usefulness on really any team, just because it can prep over those dice. And I'd give this a 3, maybe even a 4 in draft, because ramp is even more important in draft. So there you have it. There's another batch of cards. Sound off in the comments below with what cards you are most looking forward to seeing and messing around with from this set of cards in this video. Tell me what you thought about my assessment of these cards. Did you think I missed something, or was there something that you thought was spot on? Sound off in the comments below, and as always, thanks for watching.